I just want to introduce you to our speaker, William. He started the Fold back in 2007, when the site was a collection of redundant and neglected farm buildings. But he had a vision, and it was to restore the buildings, look after the land, and in turn that would look after people. It's now a hub for creativity, sustainability and health, and is a real focus for our local community. Of course, with the recent lockdown, things have been a bit quieter, but you can imagine on an organic farm, they have actually been very busy. And you're starting up again, I believe, a little bit, William, so things are going to pick up for you. So I hope you enjoy this insight into the Fold, and I'd like to give a very warm welcome to William.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming along this evening and sharing time with me. I hope I can give you a valuable insight into some things that we're doing here. Yeah, we live in a glorious part of Worcestershire, and I'd like to start by taking you down to the river. So assuming this is going to, oh, there we go. First technical glitch, I press the on button. Ah, we're there. So we are in the valley of the River Teme. The River Teme's a triple SI, a beautiful part of Worcestershire. And in many ways, I see the Teme and the river as the source energetically for a lot that goes on here. And it reminds me how beautiful this Mother Earth is, walking down to the river and just sitting by her and just being there, and holds a sense of perspective. If we go back, you know, that the river's been here for millennia. This is back in the 50s, the earliest photograph I've got of the site, probably around when I was born, and I was born here. I was very lucky to be born here, and you can see it's a very different world to it is now. And there's even a cart beside the pond there, and some of you will recognise some of those buildings are now what is the Fold. Back in the day, so this is in the late 60s, picking hops. So it was a hop and fruit farm, and I was brought up here and spent a lot of time learning how to grow hops and so on. And it was an interesting transition as we came out of hops. I was brought into this world where this was the norm, and sadly hops are quite an intense, not biodiverse crop that doesn't naturally grow here and require a lot of fungicides. And it was a huge relief and great excitement as we came out of hops that we saw regeneration of a lot of wildlife on the farm. Back in the 70s, I was farming organically, and here with an inter-row weeder and a crop with carrots back in the 70s, having a go and making a start. And yeah, interesting how things have changed since those days, the days of hops and pioneering organic agriculture, to where we are now. And I always knew that we had to do things differently. Yeah, we live in interesting times. We're very privileged, I think, to be born in these times. And those of us that can see how much we need to change and how much can be done, it's an exciting possibility, though sometimes it does seem like perhaps a relentless uphill task. So most recently, as Karen was saying, back in 2007, the Fold was born. We dreamt it in, we started dreaming it in several years before. And the vision was to improve the health of individuals, the community and the planet. And the mission to provide inspiration, education, therapy and practice towards healthy, sustainable, creative lifestyles. So I'll give you a quick tour before we go onto the farm. So here we were in the early days, converting those buildings and some of the area that was this at one stage had been piggeries and all sorts, and the granary there you can see behind the digger being converted. And here, very much as it is today, the fold and the entrance, and you can perhaps see the magnitude of changes. So we do a whistle-top tour around the shops and the cafe. And first of all, taking you into the farm shop. So one of our more recent additions at the fold, and really pleased that we're now supplying a lot of fabulous local produce and our own produce from the farm. Well worth a visit, and some really exciting products in there from the locality. The cafe many of you will have been to, engraved in the beams, local, seasonal, organic. For me, it's so fundamental that we focus on local, seasonal and organic produce. Inorganic produce has such a deleterious effect on this earth. I've got with me a little pot of some soil, and later on we'll talk more about the soil, but farming today, and I went to agricultural college, lives and thrives on how it can use the soil as a basis in which to grow crops, as opposed to nurturing the soil and allowing it to grow. And this is a very energy intensive and certainly not sustainable way forward. So the cafe, based on local, seasonal, organic, though at the moment just doing takeaways and teas and cakes since COVID. And we've got 8 or so studio shops, and here's Willow, and some lovely local upcycled and craft goods and so on. And our therapy centre, where we have a range of natural therapies being practiced to support our health, and where we really encourage people to take responsibility of their own health. And I think there's a whole alignment here between health of the soil and health of ourselves and health of the community. And it's only, you know, we can only start with good, healthy food as a basis, the foundation for a healthy life. We have events, classes and courses going on. And this is back in, some of you might have been to an Earth Festival. And John here with his beautiful baskets. And we'd have many people visiting, perhaps 1,000 or so people visiting at the Earth Festival. And this is in October last year, Avantika singing and yoga being practiced. And behind there, notice the wheat. So we've got an interesting project here. Dave, many of you may know Dave Outhwaite, has been focusing on growing some heritage and ancient grain varieties. And it's an interesting area, again, how we have so much in farming or bred out and we know a very narrow gene pool from which most modern grains are raised. And people like John Letts have been helping us see that how important it is to develop population wheats and so on. I'll show you some pictures later on of some work we're doing in that. And here's at a market, our farm team with their fabulous vegetables, oozing with freshness and energy and all the things to make us healthy. Cart house, this used to be the tractor shed when I was a lad, and this is now a beautiful venue for, it's set up here for yoga, and so many things go on in this beautiful room. And here it is set up for a solstice celebration. So out into the land, and here I was hoping to show you a video. Well, I'll talk over it. So this is, I gather you can't hear this, but this is Keith introducing, who is an incredible person who stands for nature, and the fold wouldn't thrive as it does without its volunteers. And Keith does an amazing job as an ecologist, standing for the natural world and forever walking around the farm and coming up with ideas of how we can increase our biodiversity and the levels of increase the biodiversity going on. Hang on, we're going to have to move on. So moving on to the nature trail. So we've got two reservoirs, and this is by the top lake, and the Canada geese and some baby goslings there, so gorgeous. And some of you might have seen, so sad that we got Adam and Eve, two beautiful sculptures by the top lake, and Eve was sadly vandalized recently, and we're endeavouring to raise money to replace her with an alternative sculpture. There are 3 nature trails on the farm, help people come out into the natural world and enjoy this beautiful part of Worcestershire. And yes, recently we got a donation box in the car park. Don't miss that. Please put some funds in, because it costs a lot of money to keep this the nature trails open. And we are self-funded at the moment, and your donations make a lot of difference. So some years back, we started the care farm. I was wondering how to bring my skills as a farmer into the fold. And John Dover was setting up care farming in West Midlands at the time, and he enrolled me in the idea of care farming, so combining care of the land with care of people. And it's a wonderful, wonderful way forward, and how through nature therapy and connection with the natural world, so many people can really begin a healing process that can be very therapeutic, very valuable. And sadly, the care farms had to hold for the moment with COVID, but we're opening again in August. And remarkable to witness the changes that people have been through on their journey coming in here, perhaps just once a week, sometimes twice a week, and experiencing that relationship with growing plants and seeing the natural world and their connection with it. In the early days, we were working with a lot of groups with Worcester Council and drug and alcohol issues, and it was great just to work with the guys and see the differences. We've got chickens on the farm there, and here's someone experiencing a great time with some chickens and some Christmas wreaths and our bees and flowers. Rafi looks after the flowers, and absolute, so gladdening to the soul and the heart to see these beautiful flowers on the land. And we've got some fruit. We've got, you'll see in a minute, a sacred tree circle where we hold some of our ceremonies. And it's surrounded by a range of apple trees on semi-dwarfing rootstocks. And they're arranged around so they ripen. You start, and as you move around the circle, as they ripen, as the season moves on. So soil, we need to pause and just sort of think about the soil. How can we connect with our mother, this soil, which is such a precious resource, which sadly has been so disregarded and so not nurtured, not looked after in the last, particularly 50, 70 years or so. So this narrow strip, just sort of 30 centimeters, a foot thick, around a third of the globe where we have earth rather than water, is such a precious resource in terms of holding carbon from the humus in the soil and the level of carbon it can hold. And the level of carbon it can hold is huge. And it was only more recently that the IPCC started to realize how much soil carbon impacted climate change. We can do so much by simply nurturing our soil, and organic farming is about looking after the soil. So how we can make compost in the first place. So here's some of our volunteers, and I'm sure some of you recognise a certain gentleman there. Great to see this picture of the beautiful windrow of compost being made, and Duncan with a big smile on his face there, having helped build this beautiful windrow. Compost is so fundamental. And here is Melcourt, where we buy our seed compost, where they make huge quantities of non-peat-based compost. And you'd see a similar pile at a municipal compost over at Pershore, the municipal compost area. Any of you who use a green recycling compost waste bin, your compost ends up in a compost like this, and people like us purchase it to go back on the land. And you'll see, so on the left here, that's the Melcourt compost. So we start off our seedlings usually in little modules, sometimes direct sown, and here's little modules under a polythene mini tunnel within a glass house, and there's some simple heated cables such that we can heat if we need to get things going earlier in the season. And then to the right, the image is in one of our polytunnels, and you can see that fresh compost recently spread on the bed. So we are very keen on bed systems, and it's a no-dig, not absolutely no-dig, but a low-till, should we say, system that we're using at the fold, and we're encouraging. And the soil is so remarkable and so alive, and if we keep on adding compost to the surface, then its life forms in a natural layers going deeper, and microbes and life gets going in a way that is unbelievable. And science is only beginning to understand the complexity of what goes on in the soil, and how much communication goes on in the soil, even between plants, through mycorrhizae. Incredible communications go on. And when we plough the land, when we cultivate the land by digging it, we totally break up those circuits, those connections. And so we'll tend, if we're breaking new ground, rather than plough it, to put on, in the first place, cardboard, many layers of cardboard perhaps, and then compost on top of that, and then plant into that compost. This, having said that, this would be having removed the perennial weed. Don't try and do that if you've got lots of perennial weed underneath, or if you do, be aware that you're going to have to keep on digging your perennial weed out, because there's no way around that, no shortcut to that. So yes, farming at the fold is very much about nurturing the soil, and how do we encourage the soil to provide the nutrients and the wherewithal for the plant to grow in a healthy way. And here you can see, this is down in Holywell Field. On the far side of the field, the stripes are created by compost that's been spread, and it might be 1, 2, or even 3 inches thick. And then on the roads, wood chip has been spread on the paths. We actually grow wood chip here. We've got 15 acres of wood chip opposite the Fox pub, if any of you are driving past. And we grow that principally for the biomass boiler that heats the site. But wood chip is very useful also as a mulch. And we compost wood chip, and some people are doing some more work now on how do we compost wood chip to make it more valuable as a nutrient, because if you put it straight on the ground, it'll tend to draw nitrogen out. But it's very useful here as a mulch on the pathways to make for good safe walking and keep the weeds down. And then the compost, and this is municipal compost in this case, opposite on the beds themselves. And these are 4-foot wide beds with 2-foot paths. And then this side, the mulch is with a Mypex material. So this is a permeable plastic. Yes, it is a plastic, but it is used and reused and reused. And it's a wonderful material to put down as a weed suppressant. But it doesn't doesn't impact the ground too much. It allows the water through, and it's a great way of beginning to get on top of some of those perennial weeds that I'm sure any of us as gardeners have had experience of. So here the same beds in production with planted up with lots of beautiful greens on them, and a little polytunnel behind, and some beans. And now we're going on a little tour, I hope, all being well. So this is our sacred tree circle at the front here, and then we're going on a little tour across Holywell Field. Is it going to work? Yes, here we go. Put your seatbelts on, folks. So over Holywell, and we've got about 60 beds there. And then this is over part of the nature trail, and you can see the beautiful Tank Lake on the right here. And then coming up beyond it, Cherry Orchard Field, which is where I hope we're going to stop there. Yes, we've stopped, brilliant. Where we are going to go now, and which is the newer part of the farm. And in there we've got, I mentioned the heritage wheats earlier, and so Dave's been bulking up some marvellous old varieties. And back in the 70s, when I was farming here, my focus was on growing bread wheats and milling them. We had Tooby mills here in those days, and where the cafe is now. And on the left here, last year we sowed some winter wheat, and you can see it doesn't look very good, does it? If you was, you know, the farmer in me says, well, that's a pretty poor crop, and it is. We had a very wet winter, and Cherry Orchard Field became very waterlogged. And it's only recently we've started cultivating it, and we're implementing a bed system there. And the reason for implementing the bed system is, if you go back to the field before Holywell Field, we could get on there right through the winter, through that wet period. Absolutely fine. Those beds have now been there since, some of them since 2009. And the soil structure is superb. They drain beautifully. You can get on them, you can work the ground. Cherry Orchard, more recently, despite the fact it's been down to grass for quite a long time, is not anywhere near the same quality of structure. One of the reasons for that is I employed a local farmer with his mechanical harrow to harrow it to plant the wheat, and he did it all very, very effectively at the time, but sadly the mechanical harrowing really bashes the soil structure, and it degrades the soil structure, and then the soil is less resilient and drains less well. And I'm determined to do less of that in the future, but we had a particularly appallingly wet winter. On the right here is, so that's Widgeon, a variety I used to grow back in the day, and was very successful bread wheat. So we'll just have a very tiny crop off that we're about to cut. On the right is April Bearded, and this is looking better, and it'll be interesting to see what we get from that. The plan is to produce a multi-race wheat that is many different varieties in there. It's not just a single variety. So we have biodiversity within the races of wheat. So anyone's interested in that side of things, speak to Dave or me subsequently. There's plenty on the internet. So coming back to the vegetable side, so this is back in our beautiful triple span polytunnel and some of the crops here. And I'll take you on a little tour around some of the crops, cucumbers there, and early courgettes. And here's the aubergines coming on. The first picking is just being had, some parsley, more aubergines. Beans, these are cobra beans, absolutely delightful French beans. And oh yes, some being picked at the moment. I'll come down the side here. So this was filmed just last week. Here's Malvika, one of our volunteers, picking beans. And looking out into Cherry Orchard Field. There's Luke out there, and you can see we'll have a little tour of Cherry Orchard in a minute. any of you have veg boxes, this is where your produce is coming from. And those are watermelons on the left there, would you believe? And tomatoes here, and aubergines, peppers coming on there, more aubergines, more tomatoes. Oh. I couldn't resist, sorry. And you can see the basil planted by the tomatoes. So it gives you a bit of an idea. This is in the tunnel back to the cucumbers. And, oh, okay. So that's our big polytunnel coming outside. We use quite a lot of this fleece type material over particularly brassicas, and this is brassicas here, to keep out the cabbage whites. And oh, another video. And the brassicas we've got are squashes. So squash is a really important crop. You can see a big area of squashes here, and a range of different squashes here to principally to store over winter, and we can be eating those through January, February, March, April. We've successfully stored squashes through into April to really help with that hungry gap. Keen on how do we produce more year round. It's always hard. We get into May to feign ourselves entirely from the beautiful squash coming on there. So I mentioned about beds. So you can see many of you would have looked at a track and think maybe that's a bit wider than usual. So yes, we've set these wheels at 1.7 meters, and such we can straddle a 4-foot bed. So all of the beds outside at the fold farm are 4 foot, and then there's usually an 18-inch or a 2-foot path. And so we do believe in a bit of mechanization. The vast bulk of the work out there is all done by hand. This is a new mulch mower that we've recently bought to help to chibble up green manures so they can be mulched back onto the ground and to mow the grass. So you can see here on both those sides, so that tractor can straddle those roads. So hopefully as things become more progressed, we can, if we need to, we can go and do some inter-row hoeing. We can certainly just drive down those road wheelings so the land between the bed never has a tractor on it, and we will nurture that ground and apply compost to that, such that the structure slowly improves. And I'm convinced that in a few years, if we have another bad winter, yes, the wheelings will get very wet, but the land between will not, and we'll still be able to go on and plant our early crops that we want to plant. So let's move on to a bit of harvest. So here's this garlic being harvested. You can see some beautiful sized garlic here coming out into the market area, and tomatoes, aubergines, peppers. And just to give you an idea, here's Luke cutting some onions. It's very, very labor intensive. So we are a very hand-based farm. All the harvesting is done by hand. And you can see all the waste cut to the side there that will be picked up and composted subsequently. And it's a long process to fill that box. And then here we are. This is some golden beetroot that Rachel's cutting, and each item is just carefully harvested and put into the box for veg boxes or for the farm shop that afternoon. So we'll carry on a little journey back. Well, and on the way, on the right there, you can see in the black barn, you might see a JCB and some wood chip. That's a wood chip store. and that's the biomass boiler there that heats the site up here. So we're very pleased to have that system that keeps us going. Now we're in the store itself, the farm store, and Rachel is packing what was a box has now become a bag. So any of you have veg bags, this is all hand bagged, beautiful vegetables, freshly picked that morning, going into the bag for collection in the afternoon. Yeah, all done by hand. And there's a veg box, and you can see the large boxes, 10 varieties in, medium boxes, 7 varieties in, small boxes, 5 varieties in. And there'll be a link later on. I dearly hope some of you might choose to purchase your vegetables from the Fold Farm. Keep it local. This is truly sustainable food. The current food system is not sustainable. It takes approximately 10 units energy to produce 1 unit of energy, 1 calorie of food. So 10 calories to produce 1 calorie of food in the current system, world system. The sort of system we're doing here is far, far different from that. You know, we cannot keep on banging in lots of fossil fuels, and fertilizers and pesticides. The rate of decrease in the last, what is it, since the 70s, it's 50 years or less. In the natural world, the insect population is absolutely frightening. We are shooting ourselves not in the foot, we're shooting ourselves in the stomach in no uncertain terms. And we have to change our ways. We have to nurture nature. The work that Keith does is incredible. So he encourages me to not cut the grass, allow the grass to grow, allow the weeds to grow. And it's incredible how the biodiversity and the farm is increasing and how the natural predators are increasing over the years. And in Cherry Orchard, where we're planning, we'll be planting biodiversity strips in there, and there'll be nature strips in there to encourage the predators to come and live within that biodiversity. Before completing on the farm side, on the Fold side, just want to introduce to you to help bring the whole Fold together. We're very lucky to now have planning permission for 11 new dwellings. We built this straw bale house back some years ago, and encouraged by its success, and it has an earth floor. It is plastered on most of its inside with clay plaster dug from the garden just in front. It's lime plastered outside, and the kitchen area is lime plastered, and it's a Tadlac shower wet room area built by George Cox, an incredible shingle roof, incredible achievement. And we've got planning permission for these new dwellings, and the idea is we're going to sell 4 of them to help finance the building of the other 7 dwellings, 6 of which are roundhouses. And we want to create space for 2 things, well, 3 things really. One is for people who are part of the Fold community. We have a small residential community here. The people that grow those fabulous vegetables and help look after the site. So we are a growing community in that sense, and in the sense we grow, but we're also growing in number. And we need places for people to live. We've recently got planning permission for 7 vans on site for people who want to come and short, medium term and stay and help. And these visitor accommodation roundhouses will also support interns, long-term volunteers, and people here on courses. We want to develop the educational side here and run residential courses for extolling the virtues of what can be done. And ideally hope that the people who buy the houses will enter into the spirit of a a co-housing community, and we can all work together to develop the nuances of the style of culture that we want to create here. Mentioned various things, so the website's there, veg boxes if you're interested in the veg box, volunteering. I haven't mentioned much about volunteering, but we wouldn't manage here without volunteers. Vantika, my wife, is a volunteering coordinator. Please do get in contact with her, and if we can help, if we can incorporate and involve you in some way, we will. The community housing project, there's quite a lot on the website about, and we're due to send out more information shortly. Contact us. And donations towards Eve, yes, if you'd like to help towards Eve, donations towards the fault, there's a crowdfunding campaign there. So thank you. Here is us. We went on a climate walk last year, and here we were gathered before the climate. We walked from here to Morven. It was a fabulous day, and there's Rafi with, "I wish people would wake up to smell the roses." What a beautiful placard, hey? Can't we all wake up and smell the roses? The roses are wonderful. Mother Earth grows wonderful roses. Take a breath. So thank you all. I hope that's a bit of an insight. Oh, I've done quite well on the time-wise. I haven't overshot my time. We can talk more about the farm with some Q&A, but remember, I'm a bit of a generalist, involved more strategically in the fold and the generalities. I used to farm myself, and I still look after the farm, but I'm not so directly involved, so my P&D is a bit passé. Anyway, over to you. Thank you, Louis, and thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you, William. We have got a few questions for you, actually. So I'll just go to the beginning. We have got a couple of questions from Caroline. Caroline has actually said she's the head gardener at Shugborough National Trust. There you go. So no pressure, but she's very interested in the composting system. So you've got, she's asking why you are using the strip system. What is the purpose of it? Why is it a strip? How frequently do you turn it? And does it collapse?
We have lots of composting. We don't have a system. We've had different people have come through and had their own systems of composting. In fact, I showed you the pictures of the Windrows, which I think have been the most successful. We currently got large bins, and they get turned usually in reality when there's time to turn them, when there's volunteers available to turn them, and when it feels and looks right to turn them. And it might be in a couple of months, it might be in a bit more. So we don't have an absolute composting system. I was out, in fact, looking at our compost this morning. We got a large windrow on the top car park, and thinking, it would be really nice to have this more sewn up. But I'm ever so sorry, Caroline, I cannot give you a definitive answer there. Perhaps you can say what you do.
Caroline, would you like to say anything at all?
Oh, hello, hi, thank you. Yes, the windrows is very interesting, actually. I've seen it on a bigger scale and more sort of municipal green waste processing, but I've not seen it done on a smaller scale, which is quite inspiring to actually do it in a garden situation. Here at Shugborough, we tend to do just your normal bays system of composting, where you move the compost over into each individual bay. So that was it was inspiring. So you call it Windrows, you said?
Yeah, we just call it a windrow because it is a windrow compost. So I've seen this on larger organic farms where you have attached to a tractor a turner that can turn a windrow. Peter Seger, for instance, I remember seeing his tool some years back. But it was, I think it was Lucy Otto who brought that windrow system in It was only used for a couple of years. So Rachel, who is looking after the farm now, has only been here. This is her second season. She started late last year. And we were actually talking about compost systems and windrows just last week. And I think we will be trying some windrows again shortly. I think it was one of the most successful ways that we've done the composting. Duncan, if Duncan's around, is Duncan in? Is Duncan called in? He might have something to say about it. He was obviously involved in.
Will, can I just sort of cut in there? You're using a bit of jargon which I don't understand. So the windrow, can you just expand what that actually is and what it means?
Yeah, sure. So imagine a strip. Imagine a yoga mat, a big yoga mat. Yes, so those sort of proportions. So perhaps it's 4 foot wide, and perhaps it's 12 foot long, or 20 foot long. You make as long as you want. And your materials for your composting, you put down in layers. So you'll put, subject to how much you've got, you might put just down a square. You might put down a 10-foot length of green material or brown material. You usually start with brown material, then you put a few inches of green material on top, and then a few inches of brown material, and you build it up until you might be 2 foot or 2'6" high. And then you could go on and do a bit more, and your windrow would get longer. Does that make sense?
Why is it called a windrow? I mean, it's a row, but why is it a windrow?
That's a very good question. This is an old Worcestershire term, I guess. It's put something in a window. I mean, I've just grown up with it. It's a windrow.
Okay. Right.
Very technical.
Okay.
Okay, great. We've had another question. It's about your waste. I suppose this is the waste for your compost, for your composting. Where does it come from? So, because somebody's asked whether it affects your organic status, like where you get it from.
Yeah. So we are Soil Association accredited, and it's quite a tricky one. So I wanted a closed cycle from everything from the cafe to the farm, but we can't because of the regulations, which I think is a bit absurd. So only things we can be sure of their heritage can we put into the compost, and unless we keep it for a full 12 months. So we do some compost that's kept for a full 12 months before on the land. And the compost that comes from the municipal compost at Pershore has reached a sufficient temperature that's allowed in. So that's okay. So yes, it's we were back in that conversation we had last week about composting. We are looking for more sources of compost. One thing I've trialed, but I need to develop the mechanization of, is we grow a certain amount of green manures, and I would like to harvest those green manures into a silage trailer, and then to be able to tip those and mix them with wood chip and make a compost as a combination of greens from the green manure and browns from the wood chip, and make a compost. We did that 1 year as a trial, and it was quite successful. I would like to do more and establish a system based around that, but I'm spread quite thin around quite too many things often, and it doesn't always happen, but it will happen one day.
Well, I've got another question then. So some councils now are getting into allowing more wildflowers to go on the roadside verges and in certain parks and so on as well. And of course, what they're doing then is managing with a cut and collect. So of course, then they produce quite a lot of grass cuttings. Council sort of is a little bit stuck to know what to do with these grass cuttings, if I'm really honest. And I don't know, is there any way that you could use those sorts of grass cuttings?
Quite possibly, yes. We were talking about using grass cuttings within the compost just the other day. So I would be open to conversations. Yeah, it would depend on quantities, times of year, and so on and so forth, and what was in them. Yeah.
Mm.
But, yeah. We need to recycle. We cannot throw things away. There is no way.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this flows on this question really, because I suppose because of your organic status, do you find that you've got extra expenses compared to like a standard farmer, but you obviously believe it's worth it because that's your ethos, but what kind of difference does it make to your farming methods, I suppose?
I don't think our methods are affected by the status. Our record keeping, we have to keep very good records for the Soil Association. We have to be very strict on our seed provenance, that it's organic, or we have to get a derogation if we can't get organic seed. So it's very strict, and sometimes it can be, it can take a gulp at the expense of a certain seed when you know you could get an inorganic seed for significantly less. And you have to keep the harvest records. So the record keeping makes the administrative burden higher, which can be a pain. But I think it's really important to say very clearly, this is organic. And it's not just, well, it's almost organic, but it is organic.
And I suppose you save money from not using your pesticides and herbicides and all that palaver.
Oh, relative to being inorganic,
Yeah.
I was talking about just the certification side of it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's a huge one. So inorganic farming is hugely subsidized. So the hidden costs of ordinary farming are huge. The cost to, how can we put a cost on the loss of biodiversity that has been caused by the use of pesticides and the loss of habitats? It is vast, absolutely vast. It could cost us humanity as we know it. The hidden cost, and if we did triple bottom line accounting of industrial agriculture, there are humongous costs there in terms of social costs and ecological costs. That as an organic farmer, yes, our yields are sometimes lower, or we might have additional inputs, or we might have additional time, but we don't have those hidden costs. And when people can wake up and actually properly incorporate those hidden costs, then we will see the real costs, real cost accounting, true cost accounting of industrial agriculture versus organic culture. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big subject, and sadly, government does not recognise this. People are only beginning to wake up to this. The people are now recognising that the loss, the crisis in our biodiversity, let alone the climate crisis, is incredible cost. But they haven't started allocating that cost to agriculture yet. I'm not aware that that's being specifically allocated, and it needs to be. We need to take these things on the chin and recognise where these costs need to be accrued. And actually, our food is too cheap. It's absurd, the price of some of our food, and the hidden costs are at our cost. So yeah.
We've had a couple of questions about your seeds. Like, do you use a particular supplier? Are they local? Are they heritage? Do you think that there's do you sometimes struggle to source the seeds that you want? You like seeds compare with for organic ones? So it's a few questions we've had about seeds. Yeah.
Yeah, we're erring more and more towards buying open pollinated seed, and we're saving more and more of our own seed. when I started, I was tending to buy from larger suppliers that had organic side to them, and I'm pleased that we're moving towards smaller more smaller producers are emerging. There are some good small producers around the country now in the UK who are focusing on open pollinated organic seed. And yes, it is slightly more expensive, but it's worth supporting. You know, we have a policy here. We try and buy from ethical suppliers. You know, we prefer to buy from a local ethical supplier than from a multinational company, as I'm sure all of us would.
Yes. We've got a question about the straw bale houses.
Yep.
Do you have anyone you'd recommend that someone could contact about them, or how did you do yours? Did volunteers build them, or did you get someone in, or?
So George built the straw bale house. Amazon Nails was a great source of inspiration and advice. They've had their latest book was very much influenced, and George and I worked together with the design. So the important thing with a straw bale house is a good boots and a good hat. So you know, so that the straw is not in, you know, it's well out of the soil, and there's a good hat protecting over the overshadowing the eaves. So it was very much a self-home build, but having researched a lot of books, and George's blog spot that he created when doing this was Strawman Build. So if you Google up Strawman Build blogspot, you will see the story of building that house, and Google up straw bale building. There are lots of people doing it, and get in touch if you want to be involved in the project here. I'm intending that at least some, if not all, of the roundhouses will be straw bale houses. Does that answer the question?
I think so, yeah. I'm just wondering, do you have any particular volunteering projects coming up, you know, post-COVID? Is there anything that you need volunteers for specifically at all?
Very good question. I'll ask my wife, Avantika. She sat by me.
Probably people interested in particular roles.
Or a special day that you're doing,
Yeah.
starting something. Or...
Yeah, we were suggesting we should have some special days. Just at our team meeting yesterday, we've got lifting potatoes coming up in a few weeks' time. We've got some work on the nature trail to be done. Yes, there's some site work. We have a huge site, and there's always work to be done on the site. We would love to develop such that we have volunteer working days. We're not there yet. We're proposing Tuesdays might become farm volunteering days. So that would be one possibility. Yeah. So yes, watch this space, and we will evolve things on the website.
Yeah,
Do get in touch with Avantika.
Yeah, let us know, and then we'll put it onto our website and our social media channels as well. Because I think if you say to people you can volunteer anytime, then if it can be done anytime, you never get around to it. Whereas you say we're doing a special thing and it's on this date, then please come along. And I think it's more of a hook, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a really good idea. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Sorry, somebody. Yeah. We're just wondering, have you done the butterfly count on the farm yet?
Oh no, I haven't. I heard Chris talking about it the other day, and I was thinking, oh, it'd be lovely to do that. I haven't. Have you?
Oh, I've done it 3 times so far.
Hey!
But I keep on seeing other people who are posting it on social media, they're getting like 30 butterflies and 5 different breeds, and I try not to get too competitive and depressed about it because I've only got like 3. I've only got.
Come and do one out here.
Well, yeah.
You'll be very welcome. Come and do one down here, Holy Well.
Okay, I've got another.
You'd enjoy the piece of it.
I've got another question then for you, William.
Yeah.
So I think lots of people have I think a lot of people have really good intentions about having organic food, but of course there's always a temptation to slip back and take the easy, convenient way, which is obviously go to wherever a supermarket and not getting organic. What do you think we could do collectively, the people here today, listening to you now, watching you, and what can you say to us to give us the shot on the arm that makes us sort of try harder and do more of this? Because, as I say, it's easy to have good intentions, but it's really easy to slip back as well. So how do we break this cycle?
Yeah.
Any tips for us?
So, really good question. Industrial agriculture is principally responsible in 2 parts for the destruction of our biodiversity of the insect world and the crisis that we're facing. And it's for 2 principal reasons. One is destruction of habitats. That's considered the main reason. So taking out small hedges, taking out bits of woodland, spraying around areas, just reduction of habitat is one area. And the other is sprays and chemicals, so the use of pesticides and herbicides and fungicides. And we've heard of the issues with neonicotinoides, I can never say the name properly, neonics, and bees. But hoverflies are our second most important pollinator, and we don't hear so much about them, and huge damage is done. So when you're buying inorganic produce, you need to be aware that is coming from a world that is destroying our world. We are part of this world, and if we want to destroy our world, keep buying that produce and we will die. It's as simple as that. If we don't change, we will be changed. This world, this mother of ours, will kick us off. If we do not look after the natural world, nurture biodiversity, and help bring that insect population back up, and help do things around the climate crisis, Mother Earth will kick us off. A population will be annihilated. Food security is the biggest issue coming up for humanity. And that comes around from biodiversity loss and from climate crisis. And there's no question, Calcutta will be the first city that will have to migrate because of climate change through sea level rise. We have no idea how much, sea level rise. We're just beginning to see inklings of it, but we're talking about 7 meters, 20 meters, and more of sea level rise potentially with climate crisis. If we don't change what we're doing, we're doomed. It's very easy to get on that doom bandwagon, but the reality is we need to nurture and look after and care for. So if we don't support people who are supporting the earth by applying compost, by growing, by nurturing, by looking after, by this mutual exchange, we cannot go on with this, the classical scientific view of separation of them and us and power over. We have to climb into this world of everything is connected. We are connected. We are part of nature. We are nature. Unless we work with nature in an interconnected way, with reverence and respect, then we've had it. So my invitation is that we do make that step, we make that connection with this divine beautiful natural world that we've been born into. We are lucky to live in these times, to see this incredible world, to know the science, to know how appallingly we are devastating so much of the natural world. And we can do something about it. We just need to choose to make that change. So be it buying organic food, be it traveling less far, whatever we choose to do, let's make those steps. We need to become more conscious. We need to make that inner journey of how do we connect more with ourselves, to know ourselves. How do we calm ourselves down? How do we find the space, the peace within us, such that we can let go of lots of stuff, so we don't need money for so many unworldly things, and we can just connect with the world that we love, the world that we know, and nurture that. We'll have enough money for buying organic vegetables and living a simple life, a beautiful life.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you, William, actually, because one thing is you've got these monthly markets, haven't you, that are starting back up?
Yes.
And you have some real artisan people come to that, and you have some artisan people actually at the fold as well. Don't know whether you want to talk about them at all.
Thank you. So we've got the studios at the fold here. So these are people who have made a commitment to endeavouring to help regenerate the local community and crafts. And so they are makers, designers, and they are, we've got moving in shortly, we've got a new computer repair person, so a local computer repairer. He's a genius at repairing computers, so to keep your computer going a bit longer rather than buying a new one. And we've got a jeweler and another craftsperson moving in to join our existing team of craftspeople and designers and makers who are all, need support. It's hard work, making a living from crafts is hard work. Please come and support them and support the markets. They're open usually Tuesday to Saturday in the studios, and the markets are the first Sunday each month. From 10 till 2, and there's some good people there. Come and support it, get involved. See, the Fold is a CIC, it's a community interest company. I wanted to create a vehicle that other people could get involved with and help. We can make more of it. I have a clear vision of where we want to go in terms of developing the educational side and the community side with the build and the housing and so on and so forth. But there's a huge opportunity for more people to get involved here and do more stuff, good stuff.
Yeah. And when is your next monthly market? Let's have a quick look. August.
First Sunday in August.
Sunday, 10 till 2.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Right. Well, we've gone through all the questions. I don't know if there's anything else, Louis, that...
I don't think so. Unless there's any questions anyone else would like, any last questions. If there are, then please quickly put something in the chat, or turn your cameras on and wave frantically at us.
Yeah.
I'll just say one thing. I was listening to Vandana Shiva a little while ago, and she was reminding me, Vandana Shiva is an incredible Indian activist. She was a scientist, and she's now dedicated her life to regenerative agriculture in India particularly, but around the world as a whole. And she was on with Patrick Holden talking about sustainable food and how work is being done about nutrient density per acre. So we hear a lot of talk within ordinary agriculture about yields. And if we're growing wheat, for instance, it might be 4 tons of wheat per acre. And an organic farm will usually produce perhaps half of that, 2 tons of wheat per acre. And what Vandana and some people are looking at is what's the nutrient density per acre, because of course there's a lot more water in inorganic produce, and there's a lot less trace elements and other nutrients. And so the work being done in the States looking at this, and it's an interesting concept. And Vandana reminds us that actually across the world, you know, over half of our food internationally is produced from small farmers who are by far the most efficient farmers. And it's the large farmers that are commodifying and driving down prices are actually wrecking the food systems of the globe that for generations have kept us sustained and that are currently carving the world up into a world that become uninhabitable if we're not very careful.
Okay, I think thank you very much, William. It's been a fantastic talk. I really appreciate what you've done here. I know you've done a lot of preparation for it, and you spoke fantastically, and I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure everyone has as well. It's the second time I've heard you speak, and that's why we wanted to ask you to do it again. Last time it was a real walking around, but this time, unfortunately, with the coronavirus, obviously it's a virtual tour. So thank you very much for making it an animated talk, and we really do appreciate you spending this time. I'm going to ask everybody, if they don't mind, to unmute themselves. In fact, I'm going to unmute everybody, and if everybody could give a round of applause for William, that would be absolutely wonderful. I'm going to unmute you, and if you give a clap, that would be absolutely wonderful. So let's see if we've got everybody unmuted.
Well done. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, William. Much appreciated. Thank you for all your time. Bye.
Thank you. Come to the fold.
Thank you very much.